Abraham Lincoln once said, "The way for a young man to rise is to improve himself in every way he can, never suspecting that anybody wishes to hinder him." Paul kind of said the same thing when he said, "Let no man despise thy youth, but be thou an example of the believers in word, in conversation, in charity, in spirit, in faith, in purity," and much more he used in those verses. But they both were trying to say the same thing, that though men and women may despise your youth and may try to hinder you as a young person, don't let that keep you from improving yourself and being an example of the believers and doing everything you can to be who you need to be and who you're called to be. Now, I want to say that it is for a good reason that people will despise you. You should never just open yourself up to a ministry. Never just open yourself up to a ministry, especially if you have no reason to trust that ministry. So when people despise your youth, it's not because they are mean or mean-hearted people. It's just simply because you are young and they haven't found a reason yet to trust your ministry. So keep that in mind as we go through this. This verse of scripture, it says, "Be an example in word, in conversation, in charity, in spirit, in faith, and in purity." These are the traits that you must have to prove your character in people's eyes. If you can get these things right, people will definitely respect you because of your character. And I want to get in detail in this video about the first two, which is to be an example in word and in conversation. One of my coworkers came up to me the other day and he said, "Hey, Pasta," as they call me at work, and he said, "Say this," and he said a word in Creole, and I just kind of looked at him and he said, "Come on, just say this," and he said the word again, and I kind of picked up on what he was doing, and I said to him, I said, "Look, I don't sign a document without reading it first, and I certainly don't say words without knowing the meaning of them." And he said, "Oh, come on, just say it." And the guy next to me, I've actually brought him to church before, he spoke up and he said, "Oh, don't say that. That's a curse word in Creole." And that guy just looked at me and smiled and walked away. And I say that to make mention how that what you say matters. This is why we laugh at videos of preachers and pastors standing behind a pulpit messing up their words and accidentally said something they didn't mean to say, and this is why we crack up when that stuff happens, because what a preacher says or what a minister says, a teacher or whoever it is, when a minister messes up their words or uses a word that maybe they shouldn't use, it matters. What you say absolutely does matter. It's funny and sometimes it's bad, and you can hurt and harm your ministry by your word usage. Of course, everybody makes mistakes, and I'm not talking about those. I'm talking about the words that you use in your everyday conversation. Your word usage absolutely matters. Are you using words that are respectful? Do you use curse words? Of course, I hope not. But the curse word, the idea of the curse word is because it's a rebellious act, and you're basically rebelling in your conversation when you use curse words. So replacement curse words, though they may be a little bit more acceptable in our society, the same idea is behind the replacement curse word as the curse word itself. So the replacement curse word is just a fact of being rebellious in your conversation, and that's not the type of words that a minister should be speaking or saying. You don't want that kind of a reputation that you should be loose with your words and say words that are not necessarily pleasing to the ears, but you need to have a filter for the words that you speak. You need to practice. If you have a problem with saying things that maybe you shouldn't say, you need to practice not saying those things. You need to practice. Get a filter with your words. If you need to stop talking so quickly and fast so that you can think about what you say beforehand, absolutely do that, because what you say matters. Don't use words that you know are not respectful. In fact, I would suggest that you try to improve your vocabulary. Do what you can to learn new words. Try to build your vocabulary to a higher standard. Make yourself learn new words and use those words in sentences, especially when you're ministering. That may seem like you're being fake or whatever, but no, it absolutely is not. All you're doing is showing that you have studied and that you have tried to improve yourself. When I was a very young preacher, I once had the opportunity to spend a few days with a preacher who's actually very, very well known. If I said his name, probably almost everyone watching this video would know this person. He's known all over the world. And I had the opportunity to spend a few days with him, and I respected him greatly. But at one point in those 3 days, it came to just being me, him, and another minister. And I heard and listened to their conversation for about an hour, and I was honestly appalled of their conversation. Me being a young minister, I didn't dare speak up or do anything about it, but the words and the conversation they were having, to me, it rubbed me the wrong way, because I remember before I got into church, my youth group's thing was to go outside and talk dirty, talk sexual, and it was a constant thing. We were consumed by it. And so when I got into church, my very first task and my very first goal was to get out of those things and not talk dirty and not do any of those things, because I knew that was my downfall. In fact, I stopped talking to my youth group because I knew if I would have talked to them, I would probably begin to say those same things and talk that way and get into those conversations. So when I heard this preacher, who is known all over the world and preaches all over the place, begin to talk about these things and joke around about these things, I honestly could not figure out what to do with myself. And I left that man really questioning in myself who I was as a preacher. And it really, it messed me up for a while, because I really began to ask myself, is that what it meant to be a preacher? Is that what a preacher does? Is a preacher just holy and behind the pulpit, but then when they get around other people, their conversation changes? And I had to realize, and luckily I had a pastor, my father, who had always taught me never to talk about that stuff and never to do that. And he taught me that my conversation matters. What I talk about and what I say and what me and my friends talk about, they do matter. Matthew 12:34 says, "For out of the abundance of the heart the mouth speaketh." What your heart is saying, your mouth is going to speak it. Your words will testify for your heart. Your words will give the evidence of what you're pondering on. And even if it doesn't, it will give off the impression that it does. So when you talk dirty and you talk about stuff that is not holy and is not right, it doesn't matter who is listening or who you're telling it to. No matter what, you're either going to look bad or you're just going to show everybody what really is on your mind and in your heart. So the question is, are you speaking good things? Are you speaking holy things? And not only that, what are you speaking to people? Are you watching your conversation as far as gossip and what you say about other people? I remember one time, and this was only about 3 years ago, I was talking to a very close friend of mine who I was helping through some certain situations, and she had just gotten back together with her boyfriend, and I was very upset about it because I disagreed with them being together because I'd helped them through so much at the time, so I really didn't like the fact that they were together, and I allowed myself at one point to forget about being nice and reserving myself, and I just texted her and I told her my mind. Now, I never said anything wrong, and honestly I never said anything that wasn't true. I just didn't say it the best way, and I didn't say it with being conservative, and I didn't say it with being wise, and I sent them to him, and I found out later that she actually let her boyfriend read those text messages, and her boyfriend actually told her that he said, "Look, I know he's a minister and a preacher and all that, but he said after reading those text messages, I will never be able to respect him again as a minister and as a preacher and sit under him," and that really did hurt me. It really did, and it showed me that though I've always been careful with my words, it showed me how even the more I need to be careful with what I say to people, how I say it. You may be absolutely right in what you're saying. Your message may be completely holy and pure, but the question is, how are you saying it? Are you using wisdom in the way that you talk? Are you in the middle of debates? Are you using wisdom in how you debate, or are you just making everyone mad at you? These are things you have to watch out, because your conversation matters, and you can destroy your reputation by what you say to people and what you say about other people. You should never talk about anybody else, especially not badly. Just avoid completely doing that. Don't talk bad about people. Don't talk about other people at all, because what you say can be turned and twisted against you. Be careful in what you say about other people. And here's one very important thing, I think, especially for the young minister to learn, is not to just unload to anyone. You will come to a point where you will want to unload, and you will want to say everything on your mind and everything on your heart, and we all need it. We all need to unload every now and then. The problem is that the young minister or the young person a lot of times just finds the next ear that will listen, and then they begin to just tell them all their issues and their problems. The preacher and the minister does not have that liberty. We do not have the liberty to just speak and tell everyone what is going on in our lives. We really don't. You shouldn't. You should not do that. But this is some very, very, very good advice. You need to, as a minister, find somebody who can relate to you in the ministry. Another minister who you can relate to, who you have something in common with, who you can really connect with. Make friends with that person and let them be someone you talk to. I have gotten a number of different friends that I know I can call in a second, and they will listen to everything I have to say, and they will give me good, godly, holy advice, and no matter what I say to them, I may be in a heated, just completely angry moment, they're not going to lose respect for me because maybe I said something about someone or whatever because I was angry. They're not going to lose respect for me because they understand. They're going through it. So you need to find this, whether it be an older minister or a peer who is in the ministry. Find someone you can talk to. Find someone you can unload to, because you're going to unload. You're going to hit a point where you have to talk to somebody. Find somebody who you can talk to that will understand. And the final part of this is Abraham Lincoln said, "Better to remain silent and be thought a fool than to speak out and remove all doubt." And that is such good advice. When my youth group realized that I was trying to get back into church, and they notice how that I stopped talking to my youth group because I was afraid I would fall into the same things. They took offense to it, and they actually began to mock me quite a bit and speak out against me, and just constantly upset with me because of it. And granted, I was young and I did not deal with most of the situations wisely. And especially when they would mock me and speak out against me, I thought, I gotta fight back. And I started to, try to fight back against them and try to if somebody mocked me, I would mock them back, and I would fight back, and I'd try to give them an answer. And I realized that got me nowhere, because you're not supposed to be better at mocking than anybody else. You're not supposed to be better at dissing someone. You should not have to try to explain yourself. You really shouldn't. It is better for you most of the time to just stay quiet. And I realized that. I came to a point where I realized, you know what, this just isn't working. So I just decided to stop talking, and I stayed quiet, and I remained silent for the longest time. And eventually my youth group did grow a respect for me, and eventually they stopped mocking, and they stopped doing all. They lost interest. It wasn't fun anymore because they couldn't get a reaction out of me, and so they stopped that, and they were slowly began to respect me again. I'm just saying, sometimes it's better for you to just say nothing. Just don't say anything. Sit in silence for a while, especially when you're at the beginning stages of your ministry. Just sit in silence for a while. Sometimes when you speak, you'll say stuff that is just foolish. And as Abraham Lincoln said, better to be thought a fool, better remain silent, be thought a fool, than to open your mouth and remove all doubt. Proverbs 13:3 says, he that keepeth, that word keepeth means guards his mouth, keepeth or preserves his life. He that guards his mouth preserves his life. But he that openeth wide his lips shall have destructions. What he's saying is that the ones who are careful about what they say and what they talk about, they will preserve their lives. But if you just open your mouth and just don't care what comes out, you will have destruction. Your conversation matters. Your words matter. I hope that these videos can help you. God bless.